Hi there, this is Unmesh from PiXimperfect, and if you've used Photoshop for a while, you know what masks are, right? Black conceals and white reveals. Now when it comes to targeting different areas of the image, like for making the skies absolutely dramatic or adding brilliant sunlight, we create masks based on what? Luminosity, color, or in some instances the combination of both, right? However, customizing and adjusting those intricate masks are very complicated, and seeing the adjustment in real time is not always possible. So my friend, an amazing landscape photographer, Greg Benz, created a solution, and it's actually the smartest and the most advanced luminosity masking solution I've ever seen for Photoshop. Let's say you want to change the zone of the area that is selected, you can do it in real time. Want to combine it with color information? Easy to do. Everything can be adjusted smoothly. Not just that, it's a visual tool. So you can click on the image or pick on the image to select what you actually want to select instead of doing all the guesswork. You can also create masks with BlendIf, and that too visually. There are so many features that the list is endless, and it's the best masking tool I've ever seen. Period. Don't believe me? Watch it for yourself and I guarantee you it's gonna blow your mind. So without any further ado, let's get started. Back in the magical world of Photoshop, and we have some amazing examples for you. And through these examples, we're going to discover some features and also some hidden features of Lumenzia. And some of these are so fun that holding the shift key and then clicking the button does something else, or making a lasso selection around an area does something else to that area. It's just so much fun. Let me just share that with you. Let's start with the very first example, and we'll start with the fundamental features. So after you install the panel, you will find it in Window, Extensions, Legacy, and inside of that, select Lumenzia. Now, once you install Lumenzia, you also get one more panel, which is a part of Lumenzia, and that is the Basics panel. It's also very important. Let's go to Window, Extensions, and you will see Basics right in here. It has all the basic features, like if you want to create a stamp visible layer, or if you want to create a smart object, and then if you just hover over it, it's going to tell you that if you hold the Control key and then click the button, it's going to skip all the dialog boxes and the options that it's going to give you. And if you hold the Shift key, something else will happen. And by the way, if you're losing track and want to know holding which key does what, just hover over it or simply right click on it. It's going to quickly tell you that holding this key does this or that key does that, so on and so forth. So this is the main panel, the Lumenzia panel. Now inside of that, all of these are presets for selecting the dark area, the midtones, and the light area. And every preset is of the size of that range. So as you can see, this selects this much portion of the bright area. This much portion of the midtone will be selected if you click here, and this much portion of the dark area. From here to here is the complete range, and it gives you a visual representation of which range you want to select. For instance, if I just click on Light L, it creates a mask of all of the bright areas, but it's also a very wide mask. It has a wide range. If you want to go specifics, let's select L3. Very specific highlights are selected. Have a closer look at the panel. L3 is of smaller size than L, right? And it accurately represents the range of color that's going to be selected if you click here. Now, right now, this mask is absolutely non-destructive, and you have the option to adjust it with these adjustment layers. We're going to get to that later, but for right now, let's change the background or canvas background to default. And if you click on the cross, all of the mask and everything, it's gonna go away. So for this example, let's say I want to select the sky. You can just select the light areas, bright areas, or you can also choose the zones. So A zone is for the dark areas, B, C, D, so on and so forth. E is for the extreme bright areas. Let's go with E. Let's stick it in here so that we can see all of this. Now you see these two sliders right there? You can just adjust this mask on the go. This is the precision slider. This is like choosing how specific you want to be. So if you have a higher value, the range would be wider. If you have a lower value, the range would be very, very specific. Let's go for a very specific range for now, just because I'm going to show you a different thing. Here we have another slider. This is called the value slider, as it says right here. If you move to the left, have a look. It'll select a little darker value. And if you move to the right, it's going to select lighter values. So simple to work with. Precision and value. Now here comes the real magic of Lumenzia. Let me stick it in here. it gives you these adjustment layer to work with the mask. By the way, you can turn this off momentarily if you don't want it. This will just help in creation of the mask. So first of all, we're going to go back to Lumenzia and just click on E again, and it does a pretty good job of selecting the sky. I'm going to take the value a little bit to the left to select more of the sky. Now, the first thing here is the color conversion. If you double click on it, a black and white adjustment layer is going to show up. What that does is that it helps you create a luminosity mask also based on color information. So let's say in the sky you have a lot of reds or you have a lot of oranges. So you would just simply increase the reds and have a look. Those areas are more selected. Isn't that pretty amazing? So I'm just going to also increase the yellows and the reds, both of them as well. Now if I increase the cyans, a little bit of the sky is selected. So I'm going to increase it just a little bit. Blues, a little bit. Magenta is not doing much. So mostly it's all the reds and the yellows. So let's just go ahead and make sure that we have a higher value for reds and yellows. This seems to be about right. And also, we don't want to completely blow out the tree. So be careful on that front. All right. Now, these areas of the sky also need to be selected. So there comes the curves. So if you go here, you will find that here is a curve. Now, why is the curve like this? Because that area of the luminosity range is selected. It's all linked. So if you go back to Lumenzia and then if you open back up the curves, you will notice that as I move these value slider, see, this moves too. If I move it a little more to the left, it moves too. Pretty cool, isn't it? I'm going to move it all the way to the right. All right, just like this. Now come back to color conversion and maybe I'll just increase the yellows a little more and the reds a little more. Like this, and then go back to the curves. Also, we want these areas to be selected right here. Simple, with the help of the hand right there. Just click and drag it up. That's it. You can just delete this point, click and drag it all the way to the top. Just drag it up like that. Also, you can have these areas selected as well. So if you click and drag it up, you will notice that how the mask is being affected. So as you can see how easy it has become to create luminosity masks. Now on top of that, we have one more adjustment layer, levels. So for overall adjustment, if it's also selecting too much of the dark areas, or if you want to select more of the bright areas, you can use this as an overall adjustment as well. So you have a lot of options. Once you're happy with the mask, you get to decide what to do with it. So first of all, let's go to Window, Extensions and open Lumenzia again. And I can create a curves adjustment layer with this mask. I can create a levels adjustment layer with this, or I can also choose to do this. First of all, let's turn it off. I can create my own curves adjustment layer. Maybe just bring it down, something like this. Look, the sky is so exciting right now. And then I would select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Now this is a black mask. Now we're going to turn this Lumenzia preview on, the mask preview. And then we can turn this into a selection. So if you click on SEL, cell, it's going to turn that into a selection. Now the selection is active. You cannot see it because the marching ants can be sometimes very disturbing. If you press Ctrl or Command H, you'll see that it's active. It's just hidden. Press Ctrl or Command H again. Now select the mask, take the brush, take a very soft round brush, make the brush a little larger with a lower flow. I'm going to go with about 20%. Just paint areas with white where you want a little more detail. Make sure white is the foreground color and just start painting. See? I'm going to go with a lower flow, maybe 10%. There you go. Don't forget to press Ctrl or Command D. That looks really fantastic. Just look at the drama over there. I'm just going to decrease the opacity to about 60%. There you have it. Now let's say to add more drama, you want to add highlights to the rocks. First of all, let's zoom in. Let's say you want to add highlights here and then here, just to add a little more depth to the image. To do that again, you don't have to do any guesswork. Just open Lumenzia. Here you have the wide zone picker and the narrow zone picker. The wide zone picker simply has a wider range. So let's click on that and click on one area of the rock where you want the highlight to be in. Just the common color. Let's pick on this color, hit OK. Now it will create a mask of that zone. Isn't that fantastic? Now we only want it in the bright areas. We can adjust that later, but for right now, this looks cool. And let's create a curves adjustment layer with it. So click on this button. It'll create a curves adjustment layer with that mask. And if I try to brighten it, it also brightens the dark areas. This doesn't look good. We only want to limit it to bright areas. So what do we usually use to do that? blend if, right? But in this case, we already have a mask. We cannot create any more masks based on luminosity, but we can definitely create blend if. And using this, we can create blend if. So if you directly click here, it creates a luminosity mask. However, if you hold the shift key and then click on one of these, it will create a blend if using these presets. So if I held shift and clicked on L, it's going to only show up on the bright areas. Have a look. Here's the before. It was showing up on shadows. Here's the after. Now it's only showing up in bright areas. You can also hold the shift key and try different ones. Try L2, try L3, see which one works for you. So I'm just going to increase it a lot, just like this, just to see the difference. And then you're going to go back to this and try different ones. Hold the shift key, press L. This is L, this is L2. Keep in mind, we are still holding the shift key. So L works in this case. It looks pretty realistic. L2 looks like patches on the stone. So let's go with L. Now it has a blend if, now it has a mask. Now we only want it on the stones. How do we create one more mask for this? Why don't we put it inside a group and create a negative mask of the group? And that can also be done with Lumenzia. So if you hold the Alt key or the Option key and then click on the group button inside of Lumenzia, it creates a group with a negative mask and puts that layer into it. So just one step, one click process. Now you can take the brush with white as the foreground color, just simply start painting the highlights of the stone. Pretty cool, isn't it? Now you can add a little bit yellow to it. That's up to you. I'm just painting simple highlights. Similarly, you can do the same here. To save time, I've already done that. So here is the before. Here is the after. See the highlights there? Before, after. Really adds so much to the image. Now it is time for us to add a little contrast to the image. So let's create a curves adjustment layer and create a point right here. And then make the darks a little darker. Have a look. Most of the darks are in this area. Look at the histogram. So I'm just going to take it down like this. There are other interesting ways to do it automatically in Lumenzia, and we're going to discuss that later. But for right now, this looks pretty fine to me. Now adding this contrast adds a lot of darkness to the foliage around. How do we brighten all of that up? Again, simply create a curves adjustment layer and just create a point in the middle and take it up. It's bright enough. Now we only want to limit it to the foliage or the dark areas. Again, you can create a mask or use blend if. Just go here to Lumenzia and real time, you can just hold the shift key and click on the dark area. Click on D. This is going to make a selection of the dark areas. It does a pretty good job of subtracting it from the bright areas. Let's try D2. Hold the shift key, click on D2. I think D4 is fine. So here's the before, here's the after. Have a look, it's only limited to the foliage. Also, we want to completely erase it from the middle, so just select the mask. You don't have to be super accurate about it. So take black as the foreground color, flow and opacity both at 100, and then simply just erase it away from the middle. That's it. By the way, let's say you want to brighten the bright areas a little more. And sometimes what happens is, when you create a curves and try to make a change, it also changes the color a little bit. So let's say you don't want to change the colors. You usually, what do? You change the blend mode to luminosity. That way, it doesn't affect the color so much. Instead of doing all that long step, you can just open Lumenzia and hold the Control or Command and then click on the curves button to create a curves with a luminosity blend mode. Isn't that pretty cool? And one of the other things that I like with Lumenzia is that when I created the curves adjustment layer, just removes the mask if I don't need it. Now, if you only want to limit it to the bright areas, hold the shift key and then click on L. And then let's come back here and we want to brighten this a little more and also add a little bit drama in here. Let's decrease the opacity to about 50%. There you go. Now it is time for us to add a color lookup table. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose color lookup, and the perfect LUT for this setting is, you already know it, crisp, warm. Again, this is too much and we only want to limit it to the highlights. Again, you can just open Lumenzia, hold the shift key. You want to limit it to the bright areas. Try the L. Does it look okay? This looks all right. Try the L2. That's more specific and it looks even better. If you want to see which areas are being targeted, you can also click on if. This will visualize the blend if. Never it was ever possible to visualize the mask of blend if, but now you can. So if this is checked, if this is on, you can see where the blend if is being applied. You can also change the color of visualization. If you hold the Shift key and click on it, you can change it from green to red, whatever color of your choice. Let's set it to red, and it's going to visualize it in red. The green was fine. Now when you hold the Shift key, click on L, it's going to show which areas are being targeted. Click on L2, still holding the Shift key. These are the areas that are targeted. Click on L3. No, L2 works in this case. All right. And now just click on If to let go of the visualization and have a look. Here's the before, here's the after. Just a little more boost in that sky area. I felt like I wanted a little more highlights, so I'm just going to make a duplicate of the highlights. Select the highlights group, press Ctrl or Command J, and then maybe just decrease the opacity to about 30%. We have a little more here. And there you have it. Let's take a look at the before and after. Here's the before. Very plain, very bland. Here's the after. Just look at it. So much drama in here, and there's so much more you can do. We're just scratching the surface. Moving on to example number 2. Now we have a pretty challenging image. Let's say we want to remove the shadow of the leaves from her face. How do we do that? Earlier we made a video on that, and we had to manually paint in, and it took a lot of time. Can we do it easily with Lumenzia? Well, we can try. So first of all, let's open up Lumenzia panel, and in here, I can do the guesswork by selecting the dark areas from here, or just use the white zone picker, click on that. Now, by the way, it gives you a warning that this is an 8-bit document. Do you want to convert it to 16-bit? You can do that. Just press yes, and it'll convert that to 16-bit. It gives you a lot more flexibility with colors that way. Now, right now, let's select a shadow area, a common shadow area. This seems to be about right. And hit OK. Now definitely we're gonna have to modify that. Also, you can try it one more time by just crossing it off, and let's try clicking on this area. Maybe that will be a little better. So first of all, let's go to color conversion. Now in here we can play with the reds and the yellows to make sure only the shadows are selected. You want to make sure that the shadow areas are as bright as possible and the surrounding areas are darker. This looks about right. Now let's go to the curves here. Also, we want to take this area down with the help of the hand, find out what this area is. So I'm just going to create a point and drag it down. Looks pretty good. Now we want to brighten these areas. So we're going to have to create a point and drag it up. So finding a balance is very hard in cases like this. I think sometimes we have to make a little sacrifice here and there. So to be able to select that area, some other areas would be selected too. So we're going to have to deal with that. Now this, my friend, is a pretty good mask of the shadow areas. Now let's go back to Lumenzia, and we want to create a curves adjustment layer with this. So simply click on the curves button. Now before you do, we only wanted to create a curves adjustment layer of this face area. So with the help of the lasso tool, just make a rough selection around the face or the shadow area. Take these away. Now when you click on the curves button, you will notice that another dialog box shows up. You can also feather the lasso that we just did. You can automatically feather it, or you can choose a value here. I'm just going to choose auto, hit OK. It does a fantastic thing. It has that luminosity mask inside the curves, and for that it creates a group, and inside the group it creates another mask for just that area. That gives us more flexibility to play with. Now let's open up the curves and just brighten it. Create a point in the middle and just take it up. Now right now the colors are changing as well. We don't want to see the color changes, we only want to see the lightness. So let's open the Lumenzia and click on Check L. This creates a luminosity check layer. It simply takes away all the distracting colors momentarily so that you can work with the brightness levels. So let's zoom in, make sure that it's just as bright as the surrounding areas. Now we definitely need to make some changes to the mask, but before we do that, select the mask here. Have a look. This mask is not big enough. So what do? Simple. Just select the mask, unlink it by clicking on the link button right there. Now it's unlinked. I'm going to make it a little larger. We'll make it smaller back again later, but for right now, this is all right. Now, if we held the Alt key or the Option key and clicked on the mask, and then let's say we took the brush with black as the foreground color, blend mode as overlay, with flow at about 20, and let's say we made a change here. We painted this area in black. And we felt that this looks all right, so we held the Alt key or the Option key and clicked on the mask and checked. Oh, this is not looking all right. Let's go back to the mask, make some change. This is such an inefficient way of doing that. What if you could see the effect of whatever you're doing in the mask in the image real time? Wouldn't that be fantastic? You can easily do that with Lumenzia. First of all, hold the Alt key or the Option key and click on the mask button to get back to the layer. Then go to Lumenzia and then click on Split. This is simply a split preview. Hit OK. And now you will notice that on the left hand side you have the mask, and on the right hand side you have this layer. Let's make it big as well. Now whatever changes you make here, let's change the blend mode to normal, and let's say flow and opacity are at 100. I take the brush and I paint this area in white. You will see the real-time change in the layer. Isn't that fantastic? So now I'm going to change the blend mode back to overlay. Now with overlay, what happens is if you are with white or black, if you are with white, it's going to just brighten the bright areas. It's going to just paint on the areas which are closer to white. It's not going to paint on black areas. If you are with black, it's only going to paint on areas which are closer to black. It will not paint on the white areas. So let's go with black as the foreground color first. Blend mode overlay, flow at about 10%. And I'm going to have to paint this area in black a little bit. Let's decrease the flow to about 5%. Now you, my friend, can take all the time in the world to do it. I'm going to leave it at that. And you're going to have to close the remove shadow. Now after you're done, you can turn off the check luminosity. Now the colors just still don't look right. No problem at all. You can simply create a stamp visible layer by pressing Ctrl Alt Shift and E. Or if you have the basics panel open, you can directly click on stamp. It also creates a stamp visible layer at the top. Isn't that pretty cool? Even if you are in a bottom layer and you click on stamp, it's going to create a stamp visible layer at the top always. That is the advantage of this. Now once you have a stamp visible layer, you can just use the patch tool right here. Let's come back down to the patch tool, and you can also turn on check L. Alright, now in here, just the edge areas, you can just select all of these edge areas and just find a better place to replace it with. Make sure source is selected here, patch is normal. Simply remove these edges as well. Simple stuff, nothing complicated. There you go. To save time, I've already done it. So here is the before and here is the after. Just removed the edges. Now if you turn off check luminosity, you'll see that it's gone. But again, there's a color issue that we need to take care of. Simply create a brand new layer and change the blend mode to color. Again, you don't have to click on the drop down and do that. In the basics panel of Lumenzia, you can just simply click on COL and it's the color blend mode. Now you can simply take the brush, a soft round brush, with a very low flow at about 10%. Take the sample by holding the Alt key or the Option key, click to take a sample. Make sure it is sampling from all the layers and just paint in. See, the color issues solved. Simply click on this area and I'm going to paint little by little on these pink areas and start painting on these areas. There you go. Just by doing that. And after you have done that, I'm going to quickly fill up some areas. After you have done this is a very quick job, guys. You can take your time to do it properly. You want to make sure we are only targeting the shadow areas. So you can make a group of everything you just did by selecting the topmost layer. Hold the Shift key, selecting the bottommost layer that adjusts stuff. Press Ctrl or Command G. Hold the Alt key or the Option key and then click on the mask button. Now take the brush with a very soft white brush. Just paint on the areas that you want to fix. You can have a little bit of the shadows. Make the shadow a little lighter. That looks a little better. If you want to completely erase it, you can do that as well. I would suggest maybe let a little bit of the shadow be there so that it looks realistic. Either way, you can take a little more time and create a much better result. So there you go, my friend. If you zoom out, you cannot tell. Here's the before, here is the after. Let's move on to our next example. And in this example, let's say you want to draw the attention of the viewer towards the subject and add a little faded, moody look to it. Here's how you do it. One of the ways to draw the attention is creating a vignette. And with Lumenzia, you can create a custom vignette. You don't have to worry about feather values and stuff. Everything is so automatic and good. So let's open up the Lumenzia panel. And then, with the help of the lasso tool, make a selection of how the vignette would be. You don't have to be accurate here. Stay on the outside and then simply click on vignette. Just set it on layer mask, and I want to remember the mask choice. Don't ask again. This is pretty good. It's a little darker now. Here's the before, here's the after. Now let's create one more layer. And this time let's get a little closer. There you go. And then click on vignette again. Let's get a little more closer. Click on vignette again. So this is the process that will continue, and this is what I finally ended up with. Now after that, we want a little more brightness to the face as well. So we want an opposite vignette. And this time, hold the Alt key and then click on Vignette. By the way, if you hover over it, it's going to tell you. If you hold the Alt key, it's going to lighten center. So hold the Alt key, click on Vignette, and then have a look. It's going to just lighten it a little bit. Now, it just feathers too much. So let's decrease the feather a little bit. So I'm just going to go with about 40. Or you can also do this. You can also have a bigger circle here, like this, or let's go for this much bigger circle. And then let's go back here, hold the Alt key, the Option key, and then click on Vignette. There you go. This is called inner vignetting. So here is the before and here is the after. See that? A little more brightness around the face. Now, if you want controlled results with vignetting, you can always hold the Shift key and then click on Vignette. That way it also applies a blend if. It takes it away from the extreme highlight areas. Anyway, this looks fine to me. Now let's add a warm tone to the bright areas and just to the bright areas. And for that, we're going to create a solid color adjustment layer. Just simply click on this button, choose a tone of your choice. A little warmer tone like this would not hurt. I'm going to go with something like this, hit OK, and change the blend mode of this one from soft light to multiply. There you have it. Have a look. Looks pretty cool, isn't it? Now you can only choose to apply it in the extreme bright areas by simply going to Lumenzia and just, first of all, let's try L, maybe L4 or L3. L3 looks better suited. So let's click on Mask to create a mask of L3. Have a look. So here's the before, here's the after. Looks pretty cool. Now we can change the tone from here to see what looks good to us. And everything looks okay. Hit OK. There you go. So take a look. Here's the before and here's the after. See a little warmth on the bright areas? Now we only want it on the subject. So let's create a negative group. Hold the Alt key, the Option key, and click on the group button. Now we have double masks to work with. Take the brush, white as the foreground color, and only paint around the subject with flow and opacity at 100. Now to add more fade, let's create a color lookup table. And the one I like to just dull down the colors a little bit is fall colors. Now we wanted it all over the image. Let's take it all the way up. Now I don't like the colors of it. Maybe I just wanted to use it for fading. So let's change the blend mode to luminosity so that it doesn't alter the colors. If you want to fade it even more, let's create a curves adjustment layer. Simply click on this button inside of Lumenzia. And then with the curves, we can just fade it, make the shadows a little brighter and make the highlights a little darker. Now, one of the plugins that I love in Photoshop is Luminar for sky replacements. So in this case, I would love to do a little sky replacement. For that, you can create a stamp visible layer, or you can just turn every layer into a smart object. So select the topmost layer, hold the Shift key, select the bottommost layer. That way you can always go back. Let's open up the basics panel again, which is a part of Lumenzia. You can click on Smart Object. Now it gives you a lot of options. What name you want to give it. Now if you had directly done it, sometimes it just gives weird names, maybe of the topmost layer, but this time it names it according to the document name, which is pretty good. You can choose the stacking mode. We don't want any stacking mode here. And simply just click on Convert to Smart Object. If you want to skip that dialog box, you can also do that by holding the Control or Command and then clicking on Smart Object. So let's go to Filter, Skynum Software, Luminar AI. Now keep in mind I'm using an older version of Luminar. I forgot to update in this computer. Anyway, let's go to Edit and then inside of Sky, a creative section, Sky. Let's choose one of the skies. Let's go with a sunset sky would look nice. Let's go with Sunset 1. Now, this kind of looks a little awkward. No problem with that. We can just increase the atmospheric haze so that it kind of matches a little bit with that of the existing background. And now we will have to relight the scene all the way to the right hand side. Maybe we will just change the horizon position. Maybe changing that will help a little. Bring up the yellow a little bit of the sky. There you go. We are getting a little bit of the clouds in the sky. Now, we would want to defocus it. Make the sky a little out of focus. Now, if you want, you can just increase the sky temperature a little bit. And if you feel like being a little more creative, you can come down to Mood and choose a LUT. There are lots of them that you can choose from. I'm going to go with probably, let's come down. You can scroll through them, see what looks good to you. Rosa looks good to me. And let's increase the contrast a little more. About this much. You can increase the amount and work with it. See how smooth and nice this looks? You can also add a little bit of noise to it, or film grain in other words. So I'm going to add a little bit of it. You can control the size and the roughness from here. Let's set the amount to about 15-ish and apply it. Now this looks so darn cinematic. Now let's say, in this case, you wanted to add a little more contrast, but contrast according to the subject and only on the subject. How can we do that? How can we use Lumenzia's technology to analyze the tones of the subject and add contrast accordingly? And just the subject, not the entire image. So first of all, in Lumenzia, you can just click on Edge to select subject. Now you don't have to go to the Quick Selection tool or the Object Selection tool. And even if you're not on the subject layer, so let's say you're on a separate layer and still you want to select the subject. If you click on Select Subject, it just won't work. It's going to tell you couldn't find a subject. However, if you click on Edge, it lets you select the subject because you have an option to sample all the layers. So click on Select Subject. It makes a pretty good selection. Now we only want the selection here. So output to selection, hit OK. Now that we have a selection, first of all, let's delete all these layers. And with this selection active in Lumenzia, we can just click on contrast. And accordingly, it's going to add the contrast. Now we don't want to add any feather. So do not feather. Let's click on that and hit OK. Now have a look. According to just the subject, it adds contrast. Now you can turn off the mask by holding the Shift key and clicking on the mask. And by the way, if you don't believe me, you can go here, have a look. According to the subject, it looks at the histogram, and just between the histogram, it creates these points. Now I'm going to set the opacity to about 15%. And if you want to apply it all throughout, hold the Shift key and click on the mask button. The contrast is now all throughout. Such a cinematic and beautiful look. One of the other things that I also love about Lumenzia is that it works with smart objects, even if you're making pixel changes. So this is one other photo I took a couple years ago. Hold the Shift key, click on Open Object to open this as a smart object. Now, this is a smart object. Let's say you want to remove the boat. You make a selection of that area. If you go to Edit, see Content Aware Fill is grayed out. It doesn't work with smart objects. This is a pixel change. You would have to create a stamp visible layer and then select it and then do it, then delete the previous layer. Instead of doing all that, you can just select that area first of all. Just open up the Basics panel and click on Fill. Now you can choose Content Aware Fill right here, sample all layers, hit OK. You can also add feather to it in that dialog box. And Content Aware Fill opens up. You can make changes, set it accordingly, hit OK. And you will notice that it's gone. It's on a brand new layer. And even though this was a smart object, it worked. With all the features that we just talked about, we are only scratching the surface. There are many more advanced functions like sharpening for landscapes, portraits, creating masks based on the difference of two images, advanced sky replacement. You can check out the link in the description for all of the features, and trust me, there are many of them. For a plugin of this class, I looked at the price and it's unbelievable. This is the panel that I can highly recommend as the first panel you need to get if you are especially into landscape photography. Also, since there are so many beautiful ways in which you can apply Lumenzia, Greg has made some brilliant courses like exposure blending or dodging and burning to teach you how you can use Lumenzia to the best of its abilities. So if you are interested in the Lumenzia panel or these wonderful master classes, just click on the link in the description and use the code PIX25 to get 25% off everything. Now keep in mind this offer is not going to be forever. Check the details in the description to see the expiration date. I hope I could show you something new today. If you want to know more about this panel, my friend Greg, who is the creator of this panel, made several videos which I have linked in the description. Thank you so very much for watching.